This is going to convene the June 24th special meeting of Nevada Irrigation District for the sole purpose of reviewing the Urban Water Master Plan and taking public comment. All right. And so do we want to start, how do we want to start?
Oh, yeah, I can start front.
Okay.
So,
Doug starts?
Yeah.
Out?
Yep. Okay, well, good evening, board, members of the public. Oh, sorry.
Ask for public comment on items not on the agenda.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm sorry?
I didn't see it.
No? I could be wrong, sorry.
Yeah. No.
I got it on the front page.
Does anyone have any comments on items that are not on the agenda, just for completeness? No problem. Okay, star 9 if you want to sign in. Otherwise, thank you very much. We'll move on to our presentation.
All right, take two. Well, good evening. Again, board, members of the public, this is the second of two workshops for the Urban Water Management Plan. This particular workshop is for folks that couldn't attend yesterday's morning workshop. That was part of our normal board meeting. And so just a couple clarifications. The public hearing is scheduled to be July 14th. Written comments that we receive for the Urban Water Management Plan up to July 2nd will be included in the board packet that will be presented on the 14th. Written comments received after that, and of course, any public comments we receive, input during the public hearing will be incorporated ultimately into the Urban Water Plan that we submit to the Water Board. This is basically the same presentation that we had yesterday. Again, this is just opportunity for folks that had to work or had other things they needed to take care of. This gives them an opportunity to hear that same presentation from Jim, and then we'll go ahead and open it up for the board and for the public for comments. So with that, I'll go ahead and hand it off to Jim.
Thank you very much, Doug. Can everyone hear me? Yes,
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, members of the board, members of the public. My name is Jim Crowley with Zanhero. I'll be presenting the Urban Water Management Plan for 2020. Can everyone see the slide presentation on the screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, all right. Here we go then. Okay, the agenda tonight is introductions, which we just had. I'll provide an overview of the Urban Water Management Plan, focusing on the demand and supply projection portion of the plan. And then there'll be discussion on the Urban Water Management Plan process, public hearing and comments and things like that, which Doug just covered, but we can also follow up at the end. Okay, the Urban Water Management Plan is a required document written into the Water Code statutes. It first started in 1983 as a voluntary process. It is now, over time, become mandatory, and they've added more requirements to the plan to address many of the issues that California water agencies face. The plan horizon covers 20 years, so from now until 2040. However, NID faces longer term issues than just the next 20 years. We have climate change impacts to supplies, regulatory impacts to supplies and demands. We have a changing demographics and water needs, coupled with the community identity, which is a longer term issue. So these longer term issues are proposed to be addressed in Plan for Water, which is the vehicle and process for long-term planning, conducted at a pace that allows for consideration and discussion of many alternatives and scenarios that go beyond what's in the Urban Water Management Plan. The Plan for Water was started in 2018, but put it on hold. But we still have to turn in our Urban Water Management Plan on time this July. So we are We switched to developing the urban water management plan, and then Plan for Water is expected to start back up again in the fall. This urban water management plan is developed to meet the regulatory requirements. It builds on past planning efforts as possible, but focused mostly on the near-term 20-year planning horizon. Because it is an urban water management plan, the requirements and the planning structure revolve mostly around treated water customers. The urban water management plan document has these main requirements. One is a system description, identifying and projecting, categorizing water demands, showing compliance with the SBX 7 20 by 2020 gallon per day target, describing and projecting water supplies, and then projecting those supplies under various drought scenarios. The development of a more in-depth water shortage contingency plan to address when we have supply and demand shortage. And then the other main component is a description of the demand management and conservation program. So when you look at the document, these are the main elements in the document. We're going to start with projecting demands, and the methodology implemented here to project demands is first to project customer uses. NID serves a variety of customers. We have treated water retail. We have treated water that we wholesale to other entities that then serve it to their own customers. We have our raw water irrigation customers, which are our largest users by volume. There's two subcategories of those. Those customers can also order fall and winter water when available. And then we have annual water customers that get raw water year round because they have no access to potable water. And then on the wholesale side, we also sell raw water to other entities to either treat or serve to their customers. And then the other major water use are the water rights and FERC environmental in-stream flow requirements. These are the major categories for uses of NID water. So we have here a graph of our retail treated number of connections. So the dotted line is our single family connections. That goes on the left-hand axis. So you can see from 2014 through 2020, we went from just shy of 17,500 customers up to just shy of 18,000 customers. So there is a slight growth. That's a minor growth, but the data from our number of connections supports this minor growth. I also bring your attention to the line at the top there called standby accounts. Those are starting in 2016 through 2020. Those are balancing around 1,600. Those are parcels that have a NID treated pipeline running in front of it, but have not connected up to this system yet. These customers represent the potential to eventually connect because the pipe's right in front of their house. And then we have some other minor customer types, commercial, institutional, governmental, landscape. Those are all remaining pretty constant. The other account that has the largest increase, those are our fire services to residential homes. That's a new building code requirement that homes have to have a separate fire service. Okay, our raw water treated customer trend, the top green line there going over to the left axis are the number of raw water customers that order water for the irrigation season. So we actually have more turnout boxes than these actual number of customers here. These are just the number that put an order in. And then the other minor uses, as I talked about earlier, the fall, winter, and the annual customers. Okay, so we look at that data, what the trends are in each of those customer connections in order to develop growth rates to project those. What is interesting with the NID service area is because we have a lot of people that live in a house, own a house, but are not connected to our system. We have, as evidenced by the standby accounts, the growth of NID customers is delinked from actual population projections. For instance, from 2016 to 2020, 60% of our new customers were these latent demand customers that were already there, either as a standby account or maybe on a private well. On our retail connections, to project those connections, we're using the actual historic growth rate for each category from those graphs. For the retail water projections, those are people that are already near a canal. I was talking earlier about population projections and how they really aren't completely congruent with NID customer growth. So I just show the California Department of Finance population growth here for the combined Nevada and Placer counties. They do project it growing slightly, actually more than most of our customer growth. But this is county-wide, so it includes other areas not in the NID service area. One thing that I would recommend needing further evaluation in Plan for Water is this idea and concept that the water carrying capacity of the general plan, meaning the water demands of every single parcel based on its land use, is probably not an accurate or realistic identity of the true water demands in the surface service area. So in the Plan for Water, diving into that and looking at topography and soil types and proximity to infrastructure should be evaluated to get a better feeling of the actual carrying capacity of the service area. Okay, using the actual growth rates from the past 5 or 6 years, we've projected the customer connection categories out for each category. As we see here, single family is the largest customer category in terms of numbers, but then down there on raw water, we're going from just shy of 5,200 to just shy of 5,700 out to 2040. And then we're assuming that our wholesale customers are not going to change. Okay, so we take these projected number of connections and apply unit water demands for each customer type in order to project water demands. Now, we're kind of in between in terms of California planning status. In 2023, all water agencies will have been assigned and will need to comply with what the state is calling water use objectives, which are basically water budgets. So all your residential connections and your non-residential connections will get specific allowed uses. Definitely when those become finalized and during the plan for water process, those unit demand factors should be updated and adjusted. However, we don't expect much of a difference for two reasons. One is because our treated water demand is only about 5 to 6% of our total demand. And also because our unit water demand factors are already pretty close to what the likely water budgets are going to be. So on the raw water customer side, as we learned in the agricultural water management plan process, it's very difficult to quantify what an actual customer uses because even though we measure the flow going into the canals, we don't know when customers actually take that water or for how long. We don't know spillage all the time, water loss, seepage, theft, and things like that. So what we did for this urban water management plan is we developed the water duty factor, which accounts for the actual customer water use, the carriage water use, fall, winter, annual demands, losses, and other unknown uses. And when you do that, we come up with an average of 25 acre feet per year per customer count. So that's an average of the aggregate. We know there's people or customers that use only one inch or that use more than 50 inches. But as an aggregate, we applied 25. And again, this is only for the urban water management plan projecting. It would be great to be able to further define actual raw water customer use and the other elements that get rolled up into this during plan for water. The other use on NID supplies are the environmental in-stream flow requirements that are part of our water rights and our FERC license. Some of these are not able to be recovered by NID at downstream diversion points. So they're identified as unrecoverable in-stream flow requirements. The current FERC license and water rights total 7,665 acre feet per year in-stream flow requirements. When the new FERC license comes online, the values are higher as proposed in the table here. And they're based on water year types ranging from just over 58,000 acre feet per year during a wet year down to 16,359 acre feet in an extremely dry year. The other water uses that need to be considered in projecting are our wholesale customers. Nevada City is allocated 500 acre feet, Grass Valley 1,000 acre feet of raw and 90 acre feet of treated, Lake Thera 25 acre feet, School of Arts 36, and then NID supplies water for the customers, its customers in the city of Lincoln area. Raw water is provided to PCWA, who in turn treats it and then sends it off to Lincoln to serve their customers. The city of Lincoln provided us projections going from 1,517 acre feet in 2020 up to 3,898 acre feet in 2040. And so those are all factored into the demand projections. So factoring the connections, the unit factors, this is the demand projection for our treated retail customers going from acre feet up to 9,500 acre feet approximately. So not a very large growth amount for our treated retail customers. Total treated plus wholesale plus our raw water customers plus the unrecoverable in-stream flows are shown on this table. In 2020, our total demand was 161,700 acre feet. We're projecting that in 2040, the demand will range between about 175,000 to 218,000, depending on the year type and the unrecoverable in-stream flows. Those are our demand projections. The kind of one-off major element that has to be in the 2020 urban water management plan is our compliance with SBX 77, which required us to reduce our treated gallon per capita demand 20% by 2020. This table illustrates that our target was 197 gallons per capita day, and in 2020 we came in at 167 gallon per capita day. So we've met that target. This SBX 720 by 2020 sunsets now, and we're going to be all focusing on the water use objectives and water budgets going forward. Okay, on the supply side of things, we have three major sources of supply: the watershed runoff and storage. The total of all of our rights for runoff and storage is about 450,000 acre feet per year. However, the actual available is less due to a temporal difference between rights, demand patterns, storage strategies, and the like. We also have the ability to purchase up to 54,361 acre feet from PG&E. The actual amount available there also depends on temporal difference with hydrology, but it also includes the ability for NID to purchase the water if the budget has been set aside. And then it also depends on if NIDs, what they've been doing with the rest of your storage and supply strategies as to whether or not you can buy and take that water. Our third supply is not a contract supply, but the effluent from the 3 water treatment plants in the service area discharge into the streams, which then commingle with our own supply and gets diverted into the canals during irrigation season. Our projected average year supply for each of those water sources is shown here. During a normal year, throughout the course of the planning horizon, we are projecting that it remains the same at a total of 385,942 acre feet per year, which is a very healthy amount of supply considering what the normal year demand projections are. However, so this shows that, so during normal years, we have excess supply nearing 170 to 190,000 acre feet in excess. However, our supply is more affected by droughts, and in this urban water management plan cycle, the statutes are requiring 3 demand types or drought scenarios be evaluated. One is the single dry year, and that's for us, that was 1977. The other is a 5-year drought, driest period, and for us that was 86 through 91. And then we also have to do what's called a drought reliability assessment, which is a very near-term projection. So 2021 through 2025, assuming that we have a 5-year drought. And then during that drought, the data for the district is very similar to other districts and customers around the state. During dry periods, demand tends to go up. So we have increased demand 10% during these dry years. And I want to note that per the drought reliability assessment, the projected demands are specifically called out as they need to be the unconstrained demands. So before you've implemented any conservation or demand reductions. And then during the drought, since we don't have an actual contract for the recycled water to be conservative, we are not including that in our drought supply. So when you compare our projected demands for our single dry year, which was pretty bad, it was almost 92,000 acre feet was available. We have a considerable deficit when we have those unconstrained demands. Projecting the 5-year drought, same thing. The first 1 or 2 years are show a shortfall, but what's interesting and an advantage of the NID supply is the ability to get into a drought and change the operational strategies so that demands can be increased to allow carryover storage, and also to divert as much as possible into carryover storage when the rains do come. So that's what was done here during the 86 through 91 drought. So using those supply values, you can see starting in year 3 and out to 5, we are not in deficit again, and we have an excess supply. So, whoops. The short-term and the long-term drought lead us to some observations that the supply is extremely impacted by short drought events. But then the longer the drought event comes, with our operational strategy, we're capable and afforded the opportunity to adjust that strategy and manage the carryover storage, and also purchase more PG&E water if it's available. So, you know, what this leads us to is that the plan for water should also investigate the ability to mitigate drought impacts by operational changes and demand management options compared to solely infrastructure alternatives. This all being said, we need to remember this is a selected drought per the Urban Water Management Plan requirements. Plan for water, I would recommend consider other types of droughts to evaluate how the water supply is managed during that time. So on times when we do have shortages, the water storage contingency plan is an expanded and prescriptive element for this urban water management plan. It requires these main elements here that it include something NID is already doing, but now it's going to become formalized and submitted to the state. So the annual assessment procedure is early in the or midwinter, early spring, looking at supply projections and demand projections and determining what the supply versus demand scenario will be for the year. And NID has always done that. Now you'll be doing it, and then also have to submit it to the state. The other element is the water shortage stages and responses. So the state is trying to standardize everyone on 6 stages. Stage 1, 10% reduction, stage 2, 20%, and so on down to stage 5 is up to 50%, and then stage 6 is over 50%. And then what the entity needs to do is identify the actions and responses that'll be taken by the customers, by the district, and other elements to address the particular shortage situation per each stage. The water shortage contingency plan also needs to have a communications plan where it lays out how the district will communicate its stages and rules to its customers and its partners. Has to have a compliance and enforcement element, financial impacts of a water shortage stage, a monitoring and refinement process for the water shortage contingency plan to continual improvement and address seismic risk. So this next slide here shows the state, each stage, the demand reduction and the key requirements. In the actual document, you'll see that there's a lot more responses and requirements under each stage, but we're just highlighting the major ones here, which when you're at the lower stages, 10% and less, it's normally easy to get voluntary reduction by customers. It's not a big impact to them most of the time. But then as you start going up into 20 and 30 and higher, that really, the only way to really get those types of numbers is to look at the irrigation demands. So as we go into more stringent reductions, our irrigation demands for both retail and raw water are ratcheted down until we get up to stage 5, which is basically no treated water irrigation and a very reduced raw water irrigation. During that time, also the district is evaluating opportunities for buying the PG&E water and for managing its carryover storage. So those are the main elements of the demand analysis and projection, the supply projections, the comparison during droughts, and then what to do once you are in a drought with the water shortage contingency plan. There's a lot of other elements in the urban water management plan, which we haven't addressed on here, but we can certainly take questions on those if you'd like. So Doug, that's my presentation.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jim. So at this point,
You're welcome.
we request that we open up for comment from the board and or public.
Okay. Does anyone on the board have any questions?
I have just a quick comment for the public and staff is I have a family obligation, so I'm going to have to leave. And thank you all very much. And I saw this presentation yesterday and we'll see it again. And thank you all for being here.
Hey, thank you.
I will.
Okay, did you have any questions?
I do have some.
Okay. Director Heck,
I'm not going to go over the points that I raised yesterday, but I had some other questions that I held for tonight. Okay, so and just for clarification for me, on page 7 we talk about growth in Lincoln, the chart, and I'm wondering, is the assumption that we would provide treated water to all of these developments, or is that a case of these are the developments that are in our service territory that may or may not be served through NID?
Well, and Chip, you can jump in here if we need to, but I think the idea is that those are areas within, developments within our service area that we would be obligated to serve through the agreement that we have with Lincoln and PCWA.
Okay,
We specifically asked the consultant that's working with the city of Lincoln, we just need the information for the areas that are within NID's boundaries, and that's what they provided here.
okay,
Obviously, we have a temporary agreement with PCWA and the city of Lincoln, and that may change this in the future, but for now, it's abiding by it.
okay, thank you. On page 14, there is a chart, and on the right side of the chart, there's not a scale. And so in Jim's presentation, he showed it having a scale on the right side, being the number of fall, winter, and annual
Oh,
water
gotcha.
customers. So I'm just pointing that out.
Okay.
Small.
Yep.
And then on page, let's see, what have I got? Oh, on page 27, I'm wondering if the projected water demand, so this is a chart, table 39, is this projected water demand for a normal year or,
So these are based on our previous last 5 to 6 years worth of growth. So the growth within those is what was projected forward using that same demand projection. So that's why you'll see that overall their increases are varying in terms of the percentages. It's based specifically on each item. So
okay,
single family from the last 2014 to 2020, we saw a growth rate of this. We projected that growth rate continually on into 2040 for that item.
okay,
So it was a consistent projected increase.
Correct.
Based off of the previous increase.
Right, for-
Not necessarily a dry year or something.
Right.
Okay.
right.
Okay.
And it's for each individual one.
okay, and that's why unrecoverable flows is variable, because
Correct.
it isn't for
Because it depends on the type of year. That's why we gave the range.
All right, thank you. And then, in the narrative, it talks about assuming a 10% increase. And is that a 10% increase per a year or per period? Based on then, so in other words, you have growth additive in these charts. And is the 10% applied annually, or is it assuming a 10% growth at one point and then it, or, I don't know if that's clear.
I think I hear what you're
Yeah.
saying, and maybe Jim would be better to answer that.
Yeah. The 10% is applied to the number that you would see for 2025, for 2030, for 2035. So it's not a compounding thing or anything like that. It just takes that demand in that particular year and adds 10%.
Okay,
Just to clarify, Jim, are you saying it's not compounding? So over the 20-year planning period, the total 10%?
No, I think what he's saying is that,
No.
that we project it forward to 2025. He then adds 10% to that number. So when you look
Correct.
at the projection based
So
on.
when you look at
historic-
single family, 2040, the last column, 2040 percentage increase over 2020, it's 9% increase.
Yeah, so this was only related to the raw water side,
Okay.
I believe. Is that right, Jim? Or did you also do it?
Well, yeah, so we might be confusing percents. So in table 3.9, that far right-hand column, 40% increase over 2020. All we're doing there is we're showing how much the demand for that customer category increased over its 2020 number. Okay, these percentages have nothing to do with the dry year increase. We're just showing how much demand increased from 2020. Now, when we're doing dry year demand projections, we take that total demand and just multiply it times 1.10.
For each 5-year increment.
At each, 2025, 2030,
Right.
2035.
so just to restate, to make sure I understand, Jim, it's there's 10%, so the difference between 2025 and 2030 in a dry year is 10% increase in demand? No.
No, aggregate.
No.
No, it's looking at each one of these columns, because, so the column on table,
Chart, so I can see.
yeah, 3.9.
Chart, okay,
We're looking at 3.9, correct?
Yeah, if we look at
Okay.
table 3.9, so if you look at the raw water number, what he's doing is, we're taking, so we projected that forward in each of these columns on table 3.9. When he looks at the dry year scenario, he looks at the number that we have under 2025 and he adds 10%. He looks at the number under 2030, he adds 10%. 35, he adds 10% for the dry year scenario.
okay,
So he's not adding 10% every year and it's compounding. He's just taking our projections and then he's just adding 10% at each 5-year increment,
okay,
if that makes sense.
based on the, okay.
Correct. Jim?
That is
So
correct.
Maybe I can
Sorry, I
walk you
couldn't
through
explain
a
that.
So,
I'm struggling
table 3.9, the column where it says 2025 acre feet. If you follow that all the way to the bottom, you'll see the beginning of that range is 162,795, okay? You see that?
Mhm.
If you turn the document to page 50, that's where we start looking at dry year scenarios, and if I'm incorrect here, Jim, feel free to chime in.
Yeah,
But
so
if you,
it would be easier if you just went from table 3.9 to table 3.10 and 3.11. So then we're all in the same chapter.
okay. Well, what I
So,
was going to show is that, on page 50, that 2025, if you take that 162,795 and multiply it by 1.10, you get 179,143. So that
Okay.
just kind of shows you, in a dry year, we increased that 162 by 10%.
Okay,
Does that make it any easier to follow?
yeah, no, it does, thank you.
Or is the 2020 column, is there a number issue when you go down to the bottom?
No, it's 25, duty.
on which table?
On 2020, so say if I look at 2020, even total treated,
Oh, it goes down.
2025 is less than 2020,
Correct.
right?
What
That's for
table
the bubble.
number are we on?
On 3.9, Jim, this is
3.9.
using the average duty when we projected. So, he
Yeah.
can probably explain this a little better, but the idea being is, if you looked, what table is the one that shows the duty averages? You guys
The
remember that one?
duty is,
3.4? So if you go to table
3.4.
3.4, yeah, you see the duty based on 2014 through 2020. So when you do an average that he talked about, it comes up with basically 25.0 as the average. So the fact that 2020 was much higher in the duty usage, when we applied the duty average to 2025, it actually made the number go down because that duty is smaller. The average is smaller than the previous year.
So the point being, in table 3.9, the 2020 number is an actual
Actual
single-year number, whereas 2025 is an average number.
Average number based on the average duty over
Last
that
5
last
years.
5 years, which is why the number, right.
Goes down.
So
It caught us off guard too.
I do think this will be an interesting discussion when we do the plan for water, because
Yeah.
then we'll look at the land use
Mhm.
and be able to say, is that duty, customer duty, that is historically our average, do we expect that to maintain in the future, given the land use that's available to put into production?
Right,
And the usage of our canals as we become more efficient, as we start to, do things to reduce the losses, right? Because that duty number includes all of that in there.
Right,
Yeah.
It's not just demand, it's actual losses, et cetera,
Yeah.
right?
yeah,
It's an interesting way to look at it, and I think correlating each of these years to how wet or how dry they are may also give us
Right.
a useful tool in the future to say, in dry years, this duty factor is going to go up and we should expect it.
right,
It's an interesting way to look at it, I like it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then I assumed, Jim, based on your comments that, and not directing it just to Jim, but what I heard is that the growth projections that you use, so you have the 0.79 annual growth that's projected for Placer and Nevada counties as you look at the entire population of both counties, and recognizing that that isn't necessarily our service territory. But then I heard Jim say that what he used for the growth factor was actual growth in our service territory.
Correct.
And so I just wanted to clarify that you were just kind of putting out the population number as a fact,
Yes.
and then what you really applied was this other.
Correct, and when we looked at the team that HDR did, when they did their model for their demand, they included the land uses, they included impacts related to the population projections, et cetera. So those were all incorporated in there. In here, they're not. Like you said, it's just a reference, right? And that, from our team that was done based on 2011, it showed a decline in the population of Nevada County. Now, when you go to the Department of Finances, it's showing an increase. And they expect it to be even more different based on the fact that COVID has potentially changed, folks working from home, et cetera, which means more folks could potentially leave the urban areas,
Yeah,
to come into the suburbs and
yeah.
in the rural areas. So,
Okay, well, thank you so much for your patience with my questions.
absolutely.
I have a quick question about that 0.79. I know that West Lincoln is booming, or Western Placer County is booming, and Rockland, all those places are going like crazy. But it said is it the entire Placer County?
Yes.
It includes the entire, only 0.79.
Yeah, that's coming right off of the
Hmm.
Department of Finance. Yeah,
That's the aggregate between Placer and Nevada.
that's both of them, right.
Yes, it
Right.
is.
So,
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, so Placer's probably a little higher than that.
oh, yeah.
I
I think Placer's way higher.
yeah.
Okay. Do you have any questions, Trustee Tran?
Two quick ones. So what was our growth rate for the past year? 1.2?
Just the last year on overall?
Meaning number of customers connection?
Well, just by population increase within our district, I heard it was about 1.2%. So we have a growth.
Jim, do you have that number handy? We tend to look at more as customers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want,
Actually,
the trend is
So we didn't do population for 2019. But we did do number of connections from 19 to 20. And that was, so it was 19, number of total connections, 24,681. I'm looking at table 2-3. And then table 20, 24,836. So just for 681 divided by 836. So that was just shy of 1% in number of connections. If I did my math right, maybe someone can check me.
But to give a little perspective, in Lincoln, they typically pull around 127 building permits a year between 13 till 2020. This current fiscal year, and they run on a July to June, they're on order to pull around 900, but most of those are not in the NID service territory. We won't start seeing those building permits get pulled until this summer. So I would anticipate, you'd probably see maybe 200 additional connections. But remember, the water sold to Lincoln is raw water wheeled through PCW Bank.
Right.
So the point being that we're trending up in our population growth and usage. So someone asked me, and I didn't have an answer, how much water is used for fire protection? Do we track that?
So it depends on what kind of fire protection we're talking about. So, the new construction requires a fire meter on the homes, and we can monitor it, and we know how much water usage is being used for that. Essentially, those meters are not supposed to be used for consumptive purposes, and if they do use it, we charge them at a higher rate. Usage through hydrants and whatnot to put out a community fire, we don't track.
Yeah, I didn't think so, but.
Yeah, it would just be a raw water number in terms of the treatment plant, but
Yeah.
it would be hard to pull that apart.
Yeah.
I was asked that. So I'm asking.
When we do flush the system, we do track how much
Right.
we use in each hydrant to flush the system out. And that's all part of the reporting that goes to the state because, as y'all know, we're being more and more scrutinized about water loss. So we want to make sure we track where every molecule goes so we don't get fines.
There really isn't a large amount of structure fires that are pulling that much water.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay, that'll, okay, I'll open up the floor for public comment. Does anyone have a public comment? Star 6 on your phone or star 9? Star 9 on your phone?
Raise your hand.
No public comment? This is your big chance. Otis Wallen? Can you unmute? There we go.
Yeah, thanks for this opportunity to comment. Just for the purpose of introduction, I did spend 20 years on the board of PCWA and president of the American River Watershed Institute at the current moment. There are a couple of differences between the raw water master plan and the urban water master plan draft as we're seeing it. I'm going to just highlight two. The one is in the ag water management plan. You stated particularly in an appendix that all raw water is measured, and in my comments on that, I said no. In fact, it's not. And in this urban water management plan draft, saying actual raw water customer usage is difficult to quantify because basically it varies by customer according to customer practices. So basically, you're only able to measure the raw water in the aggregate, and not by the individual user, nor by carriage water or seepage or evaporation or stock water or theft or another category called unknown uses. And particularly this year, we have a tremendous opportunity because most of that water, there are great opportunities for carriage water. PCWA saved a tremendous amount of water, but apparently 15,000 acre feet of water by just managing and measuring tailwater very accurately and putting baffles and measuring how much water was being introduced at the top end of the canals. So there's a lot of opportunities there, but on the customer side, that's where the real opportunity is. And here with the drought, the only way you can get to that is by doing audits of the actual uses of the actual customers, actually knowing your customer, actually knowing what they need and not what they just contract to buy. If we have another dry year next year, you're going to have to really make arrangements with literally every customer. And so I really urge NID to begin auditing this year, really a strategic approach to understand what the benefits would be by auditing your customer base. There was another difference that was interesting. Previously, when I would suggest doing audits and making special arrangements for commercial agriculture, because all of us support commercial agriculture, and we want to make a distinction between genuine commercial agriculture and landscape uses or turf or water features or all kinds of other things where people are using raw water for. And in this report, actually, you suggest in the drought plan that you actually have an exemption for commercial agriculture, and that might be based on an IRS Schedule F, and that you could actually make a distinction between commercial agriculture and other uses. And this is a tremendous opportunity because you can't treat large volume commercial agriculture. You can't paint them with the same brush. It doesn't work. You really have to meet their individual needs and their demands And you can only do that if you know them very well and have really audited the circumstance. If you do a blanket 30% or 50% reduction, it can be devastating. But if you really know what the farmer needs and can make an assurance that we're going to back commercial agriculture, that gets us over a big hump. And there's a lot of water to be saved. So it's really just urging NID to take up the opportunity to learn your customers really, really well, because that's where the savings in water can really happen. And I urge you to maybe take up a program of auditing the commercial agriculture folks as a pre-exemption, before they have to file an exemption to a blanket 30% or 50% reduction. Begin immediately with making that distinction so we know that we can meet the needs of local agriculture, because it was true in the 20 years I was on PCWA, and it's true for all of you sitting on the board. Everyone in our community wants to see commercial agriculture successful. And the only way we can do that is with really clear knowledge of what's happening there. So I think that's the fundamental message that I wanted to convey. There's some promise. I think you're making some progress on the demand numbers, and look forward to furthering that, and really look forward to the plan for water, because the momentum of looking at both the Ag Water Management Plan and the Urban Water Management Plan as simply compliance documents to a state mandate has really damaged your ability to see them as opportunities. And as I also noted in my comments to the Ag Water Management Plan, PCWA uses these exercises as genuine planning exercises. And they include an appendix that explains to DWR how it is in compliance with their mandate. But the body of the document is actually meat of planning. It's the real thing. So I urge you in the future to pick this up, and hopefully that in the plan for water we will see that really extensive planning effort to take effect. So again, thanks for the opportunity, and hopefully we can be helpful in the future, and continue to comment and help to refine the approaches that you're taking.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Otis. Does anyone else have a public comment? Or not? Oh, Otis? Oh, back down, okay. So that's it on the public comment. This is pause for just a minute. Okay.
Yeah.
So hearing no further comments, thank you very much for calling in and participating, and we'll close this special session.
Thank you.